Have you ever noticed that the deeper you think, the lonelier it can feel? As if clarity turns down the volume of the crowd. It isn't just you. Across eras, cultures have often bristled at those who point out what others would rather not see. Socrates was tried for asking corrosive questions. Hypatia was murdered for doing mathematics in a world allergic to it. Semmelweis was mocked for insisting doctors wash their hands. Alan Turing was punished after helping save millions. Not because they were dim, but because truth, when it lands, rearranges the furniture, and people don't love redecorating their certainties. So why does depth spark distance? The answer cuts into how minds protect themselves. Stand next to someone who can lift more weight, and you don't feel personally insulted. You might even ask for a gym tip. See someone with more money and envy may flicker, but your core story about who you are remains intact. Intellect is different. We build identity out of ideas, beliefs, worldviews, stories we tell ourselves. When a person arrives who thinks in unfamiliar ways, it's not merely a new fact on the table. It's a mirror held up to our mental habits, and mirrors are generous with the details we'd rather blur. Call it the cognitive mirror. Deep thinkers don't simply add ideas. They reflect back limits. They don't mean to embarrass anyone. But the very presence of a sharper model can make us aware of the places our own map is smudged. That sensation, part curiosity, part vulnerability, often gets misfiled by the brain as threat. And when identity feels threatened, we defend. Not always by arguing the point, but by changing the subject, laughing it off, or quietly freezing out the person who brought the discomfort to the table. Why does intellect provoke this more than other advantages? Because it reaches past outcomes into meaning. Muscles and money live outside the self. Beliefs live inside it. Question my facts, and I can update. Question my frame, and you're touching my sense of self. In that moment, it can feel less like we're exploring, and more like I'm under evaluation. Egos, like eyes, blink at bright light. Context makes it louder. One-on-one, where status pressures drop, people are likelier to lean in. In groups, reputation enters the chat. Suddenly, being right competes with looking right. Performances harden. That's why a thoughtful point that lands beautifully over coffee can bomb at a dinner table. Add to this another human quirk. We trust warmth more than competence. A simple, confident story with friendly delivery will beat a nuanced analysis that sounds uncertain, even when the analysis is closer to the truth. Charisma compresses, depth expands. Viral culture rewards the former. If the psychology is messy, the biology isn't innocent either. When we feel outclassed or exposed, the brain's threat detection systems light up. It's not just fear, it's salience, signals that something important and potentially status-altering is happening. Identity-relevant friction recruits the circuits that shout, "Protect the self." That worked well in small tribes where belonging meant survival. For most of our history, harmony beat accuracy. The lone dissenter might have been right, but rightness didn't keep saber-tooths at bay. Our nervous systems still carry that bias. Better to fit in than to be right and alone. Layer on the shortcuts our minds use to save energy. People who know a little tend to overrate their grasp. People who know a lot notice the edges. That asymmetry breeds friction. We prefer familiar stories, status quo bias, fluent messages, ease bias, and evidence that flatters our current beliefs, confirmation bias. When pushed too hard, some dig in, not always with a backfire, but often with a polite shrug that says, "Let's not go there." And then there's the megaphone of our time. Algorithms tuned for clicks. High emotion outruns high resolution. Slogans travel faster than systems thinking. The internet, in other words, isn't hostile to intelligence. It's indifferent to it unless intelligence learns to speak in layered, opt-in doses. What does this mean if you're someone who can't stop tugging on loose threads? It doesn't mean you should dim your light, it means you'll need to steward it. Choose your arena. Small rooms over crowded stages when the idea is still fragile. Lead with a clear headline before walking the long road of nuance. Ask permission to go deep. Quick take, or do you want the nerdy version? Share benefits before the blueprint. Put story before schema. And signal warmth, curiosity, humor, second-person empathy, so your competence doesn't register as a status play. You're not trying to win. You're trying to invite. This tension isn't new. Arthur Schopenhauer thought intelligence felt less like a gift and more like a burden. He wrote about the will, the blind drive that powers life, and noticed that most of us are steered by the will to live. Pleasure, comfort, repetition, safety. But some are pulled by a different current, the will to truth. That current asks questions that topple the little altars we build to soothe ourselves. It can cost you belonging. It can cost you ease. It can make a party feel like a pantomime. Yet there's a gentler reading even Schopenhauer points toward. If desire is a treadmill, then stepping off through art, contemplation, compassion offers relief. Deep thinkers aren't doomed to exile. They're called to curate their company. Build circles where nuance is a love language. Trade the fantasy of persuading everyone for the practice of nourishing a few. Be a lighthouse, not a searchlight. Steady, visible, available to those steering by your beam, not forever sweeping the horizon in search of converts. So, if you feel alone on the ridge, don't mistake altitude for isolation. The air is thinner up here, yes, but the view is honest. Protect your warmth, hone your clarity. Find or found the small rooms where big questions are welcomed. And keep that will to truth alive, not as a weapon, but as a way through the fog, for you and for the few who are ready to see.